All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to break down the core argument of a book that's, well, kind of a giant in 20th century thought, C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity. We're going to trace his logic step by step. Now, you have to picture the scene. This was written during the absolute darkest days of World War II. It actually started as a series of BBC radio talks, and the guy giving them, an Oxford professor and, get this, a former atheist named C.S. Lewis. He was basically trying to explain the heart of his faith to a country that was getting bombed every night. So to really get why this book still hits so hard, we're just going to follow Lewis's argument from start to finish. It's this really clear, logical path, and it kicks off somewhere you'd never expect, a simple, everyday argument. Okay, so Lewis kicks off his whole case with a really simple observation. Something that, let's be honest, we all do. We quarrel. We argue. But have you ever stopped to think about how we argue? Lewis points out something fascinating. We almost never just say, hey, I don't like what you're doing. No. We appeal to some kind of standard, a rule that we expect the other person to know about. Yeah, think about phrases like these. How would you like it if someone did that to you? Or, hey, that's my seat. I was here first. It's kind of funny when you think about it. These aren't just complaints. They're a huge clue. We're pointing to some kind of unwritten rule book, this shared idea of fair play, which Lewis calls the law of human nature. And his point is that this moral law is, well, it's real. It's an objective standard. It's not just a matter of taste, like you prefer chocolate and I prefer vanilla. And it's not just a social convention, like driving on the left or the right. It feels deeper than that. It's this thing we all seem to know exists, even when we try to ignore it. Okay, so if we accept that this moral law is a real thing, Lewis says, well, what does that tell us about the universe we live in? And he argues it basically boils down to two very different ways of looking at everything. So here are the two big possibilities. First, there's the materialist view. Basically, the universe just is. Matter and space just happen to be there, and through a crazy cosmic fluke, here we are. Then you've got the religious view, which says that behind it all, there's a consciousness, a mind. And Lewis is quick to point out, science can't really settle this debate. Science is brilliant at telling us how the universe works, but it can't tell us why it exists at all. But, and this is a big but for Lewis, he says we have a unique clue, a piece of inside information. We aren't just looking at the universe from the outside, like a scientist looking at a rock. We are the rock, in a manner of speaking, and inside us, we find this insistent moral law. That, he argues, is a massive pointer. It suggests that whatever is behind the universe is something more like a mind, and a mind that really, really cares about right and wrong. Now, this is where things get really personal, because this moral law doesn't just point out at the stars. Lewis says it also creates this deep, uncomfortable tension right inside of us, a fundamental human dilemma. And it boils down to two really simple foundational facts. Fact one, we all have this idea of how we're supposed to behave. That's the moral law. Fact two, we don't actually behave that way at all. It's that simple. We know the rules and we break them all the time. And for Lewis, this is the absolute starting point for any clear thinking about, well, anything. You have to face this reality head on. This huge gap between what we know is right and what we actually do, it leaves us in this constant state of what he calls unease. It's that feeling in your gut when you know you've messed up, that you haven't lived up to the standard. So we're in a bit of a jam, right? We've got this law we can't keep, and this is the exact point where Christianity steps in and says, we have an answer. And its answer revolves around one of the most, well, shocking is Lewis's word, one of the most shocking claims ever made. Of course, he's talking about Jesus of Nazareth. And Lewis really zeroes in on the fact that Jesus wasn't just another wise teacher. The things he said were, honestly, they were off the charts. Forgiving sins, for example. Not just sins committed against him, but any and all sins. Think about that for a second. That's a claim that only makes sense if you are the one being offended, if you are the God whose laws are being broken in the first place. So this puts us in a corner. Lewis famously argues that calling Jesus a great moral teacher just doesn't work. It's the one thing you can't call him, because a man who goes around saying the things Jesus said is not a great moral teacher. He's either a complete liar, a total lunatic, on the same level as someone who thinks they're a poached egg, or he's telling the truth. And Lewis's argument is that if you actually read the Gospels, the liar and lunatic options just don't fit the picture of who this person was. which leaves you with only one staggering possibility, that he was exactly who he claimed to be. The Lord, God himself in human form, landing, as Lewis puts it, in enemy-occupied territory. Okay, so if we follow the logic and land there, if Jesus really is who he said he was, then Lewis argues the whole point of Christianity is probably not what most of us think it is. It's not just a system for making bad people nice. Nope. It's something way, way bigger. And to get his point across, he uses two Greek words for life. First, there's bios. That's just biological life. It's the stuff we all have, the stuff that winds down and eventually dies. But then there's zoe. And zoe is a totally different thing. It's spiritual life, the uncreated, eternal kind of life that God has. So what's the point? According to Lewis, the whole purpose of Christianity is for us who only have bios to somehow get this higher life, zoe. And it's not something you learn from a book. He says it's more like a good infection. It's something you have to catch from the one person who has it to give. It's meant to be spread. So you see, the goal isn't just to make us better people. It's a complete transformation. Lewis uses this amazing analogy. It's not about training a horse to jump higher. It's about giving the horse wings. It's about producing a completely new kind of person, what he calls new men. And in the end, Lewis leaves us with this one powerful image to chew on. He says right now, we're all like eggs. And, an egg is fine for a while, but you can't be an egg forever. It either has to hatch or it goes bad. And so the choice he puts before all of us is pretty stark. Are we going to let ourselves be hatched into this new kind of life, or are we just going to stay put and eventually go bad?